Hi everyone, my name is Chris. I'm the founder of Shelly Systems. Today we're going to go over how to make a flowchart in Shelly Systems. In particular, we're going to model an agile development software process. So what that workflow would look like for a given user story, how you would get it from a business need all the way to a product owner accepting it and the work being complete. Let's go ahead and get started. There are going to be a few parts you're going to need to know. We're going to start with declaring the flowchart element, talk about declaring nodes, which would be the individual pieces of the flowchart, defining the connections between them with edges, and then setting unique text, setting a particular text on each node. Getting started, I'll declare this element. I'll just call it Agile. We're over here in line 27. Call it Agile, and then we'll have a type flowchart. We have to give every flowchart nodes. So I'll start with the business need node. So each node will by default just be this rectangle over here, and you have to give it a variable name like name, meaning you can't have spaces in the name. We'll circle back to how to get this to show up, this text to show up differently with setting text. Within flowcharts, you can have different node types. Since this will be the start of the flowchart, we'll give it a type start, which changes it over to this start circle. As far as what the process will be, you'll start with a business need, then you'll elicit requirements from users or a product owner, and then you'll write the user story, and then you'll verify that user story with a product owner. So over here, we declared 4 different nodes. You have that business node one. Each of these is going to be an item in a YAML sequence, and then you can have a mapping, or you can have it be a simple scalar string like this, and it'll still be the same. Now, one thing I want to note, when you have verify story with PO, the product owner can either accept that story or reject it. So this is going to be a decision gate, which you can model with the gate type for a node. That changes this over to a diamond shape. And then we can talk a little bit about declaring edges. So edges are connections between your nodes in a flowchart. So I'll start with a chain. A chain just lets you connect a sequence of nodes in the order that you write them. So over here in line 37, we have a sequence starting with a chain mapping, and that chain mapping points to another sequence. We'll then call out those nodes by name. So we have business need, elicit recs, and write user story. Then we'll also have another type of edge you can declare, which is a from to edge, meaning you specify the name of the from node. In this case, we'll go from we'll actually have verify story in this chain, PO. And then we'll also define what happens if the PO rejects. So if we verify the story with the PO and they do not like it, they would reject it. So we can specify that it would go back to eliciting requirements. So you can see this arrow over here circles back to elicit recs. We can also put some text on here to clarify what happened, what happens in this process. So in this case, the PO rejects it. So this is how it would work if you're just wanting to write down and document a business need. You would want to verify it. If it's not quite satisfactory to the need, then you might need to start over writing it and look at reworking it. Now, if it does get accepted, you would then prioritize that for work. Say if you use sprints in sort of a Scrum format, you would prioritize it on the backlog or do some backlog planning to choose which sprint it's going to. In this case, we can do another from to edge to connect verify story with PO over to prioritize story. And then we'll specify the text as PO accepts. So again, PO rejects, it goes back to elicit requirements. If they accept it, you can go ahead and prioritize it. which essentially means you get it scheduled for completion. Now, next thing we'll do is we'll then model a flowchart in a flowchart. So as part of declaring nodes, again, we have these types. One of those types can't itself be a flowchart. So say if we're sprint on story, could be a process of developing and testing that story. So we can give it a type flowchart. Once again, a flowchart needs nodes. So we'll say develop and test as the nodes. So you get this nice sub flowchart over here. And then we can plug that in to edges as well. You can either go onto the top level of the flowchart or to the individual nodes. I like the way it looks when you connect it to the individual child nodes of the sub flowchart. So I'll do that. We'll set up a chain again. That chain will run from prioritize story through develop and test. And then from test, we'll have another gate. So once it's tested, you just need to verify it with the PO again. So you'll verify acceptance with PO. That'll be another decision gate. Now you don't have to put on these decision gates to have multiple edges coming out of them, but it does indicate to the audience of your chart that you are working with a decision point. You're working with some logic that's happening, whether something can go one way or another. So we'll verify acceptance with PO. And then we'll have another pair of from and to edges. So from verify acceptance with PO to, and then we can have a done node as well, which you can give type end, which will give us this nice end circle for the flowchart. So verify acceptance with PO to done would be if the PO accepts. And then if they do not accept, we would have a separate edge that goes all the way back to eliciting requirements. So to elicit recs, text is PO rejects. And that is it. That's our flowchart. So we talked about how to declare these nodes. We talked about a few of the different node types, including start, end, gate, and flowchart. We talked about the two different edge types where you can declare chain as well as from and to edges. And then let's talk really briefly on text. So you can see some of these nodes have the text wrapping into multiple lines. For example, this one, verify acceptance with PO. You can specify what text you want, either on the node or even on the title of the flowchart by having a text field here. So I'll say verify acceptance. I'll just call it that. And you can see down here that this node updates. And that's about it to the basics of making a flowchart. Takes about 42 lines of YAML. And now once you have this, it becomes very easy to have it model your processes as well as change it around. If you're really into Shelly YAML, you can use formulas. Lots of interesting stuff you can do. You can, of course, download this diagram and then use it in your documentation. That's it for me. Thank you for watching. Talk to you later.